Okay, I believe we now have a quorum. I'll call the November 1st meeting of the Neighborhood First Advisory Committee to order. This is our fourth meeting, and it's a meeting that replaces the one that was originally attempted on October 28th. Let's begin with roll call, starting on my left with Penny.
Penny Dye, here.
Joe Gross, here.
Peter Hoey here.
Brian Turbot here.
Brooke Moore here.
And on the phone, Doug Abbey and Posey Constable. Is that correct?
Doug Abbey here.
Yep.
Posey Constable not there.
Okay. Thank you both. And David Iverson and Eric Sabesky have informed us that they would not be able to attend. Next order of business is to approve the agenda. Could I have a motion? Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Next order of business is approval of the September 23rd, 2019 minutes. Could I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Penny
Oh.
Dye,
Aye.
We need to roll call on the approval of the minutes.
Yes.
Okay.
okay, Penny Dye, aye.
Joe Gross, aye.
Christie Graham, aye.
Peter Hoey, aye.
Brian Turbot, aye.
Brooke Moore, aye.
Thank you very much.
Doug Abbey, aye.
Yes, that's right, they can vote, yeah. Thank you, and Posey, you're an aye?
Posey Constable, aye.
Thank you. The next order of business is a discussion of our housing situation document, including the SHI list, SHI standing for Sustainable Housing Inventory.
Subsidized.
Subsidized housing inventory, excuse me, which is in your packets. And I'm going to turn this over to Tucker with a comment. At our last meeting, we essentially approved this, but we decided to wait to give our final approval to give the public a chance to provide comment. Tucker has at least one comment from the public, plus in the ensuing 30 days, we have made some minor adjustments ourselves, which we're going to go through now. So Tucker, if you could lead that.
Sure. Tucker Holland, Municipal Housing Director. You all, I think, have had the opportunity to see in the packet the revisions to this document. So it, in essence, tried to incorporate the input and ideas that were shared at the last meeting. You can see what was eliminated and what was added in the gray crossout and red type. Peter mentioned basically just before the packet was going out to you all, I did receive some suggested edits from a member of the public. I have those. They're not yet incorporated here. I would describe them largely as like wordsmithing, although I think there's some good ideas in there. So if you found what we have here at the end of your discussion to be acceptable, if we could leave it open to minor revisions that are consistent with the intent and so forth, I think that might be just a good thing.
I think that works okay because at our next meeting, which is going to be coincident with the Affordable Housing Trust.
Yep.
Now on the 19th, not the 18th, we're actually going to be presenting for their feedback. So that'll give us a chance after we get their feedback and
Yep.
the input you're talking about.
Exactly.
We can all look at that together and then we'll have our meeting and approve it.
Precisely.
Okay. I did have one comment though on what is in everyone's packet, and it's Exhibit 4, I guess, which is a chart or you might call it a graph that Tucker and I had discussed. It was actually my intent to try to create a graph or a chart which shows us beginning at 191 units and progressing at 24 units per year, theoretically, ultimately, all the way out to 489, 13 years from now. And then also to show how we're actually going, the 24 units being the state mandated requirements, and then the graph line would show how we're actually doing. What Tucker's come up with is a slightly different version that just shows the annual instead of the cumulative. And I just thought I might ask the group whether or not you think it would be more clear if it showed the cumulative, the
I think
goals that we have to meet.
my opinion is that that's probably a second separate chart. I think it's gonna be less confusing.
My only hesitation with the cumulative is not what the state looks at in order to determine safe harbor. It is always an isolated calendar year, and what happens in that calendar year that determines whether you're eligible for a safe harbor period or not. I'm happy to illustrate things any way that anyone feels is helpful, but I just wanted to point that out.
I think it's helpful to know, here's where we are, here's the goal, here's what we have to do to get there.
Yep.
And that goal's gonna change, whether it goes up or down, it's gonna change.
490.
Right. But as an example, like, let's say that we're at 200 units today. And so then in our case, we'd be adding 24 units, as Peter was describing. So the next year we'd need to be at 224, and the next year 248, and so forth. That it is just slightly misleading because we could hit, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
There's a safe harbor now. It's
Yeah.
oversimplification, but I still think it's helpful,
Yep.
especially for the public,
Yeah.
to have a more clear understanding.
A clear understanding is what I'm all about. So whatever you think is going to be helpful is great.
The big goal is 10%,
Correct.
in my opinion.
Yep.
So
10% of
we'd like to
gas.
show people how we're progressing toward that goal with the cumulatives.
Okay.
And I think what Exhibit 4 is showing is more the safe harbor requirement.
Correct.
Versus
Yeah.
total.
Yeah.
That's what Tucker is saying.
Yeah, we have two masters. We have
So it needs to be.
the safe harbor and we have the overall 10%.
Because the safe harbor is really important to see each year how we sure we're staying in it until we reach the 10%, whereas the overall 490 is kind of.
Yeah. And exhibit 3 right now does illustrate where we're at today, and to the greatest degree we can predict when additional units will come on. It does run a cumulative total. So I could put that in a graph form in addition to this graph, but that is slightly different than I think what Peter initially was describing. And again, whatever you all feel is useful, we're obviously happy to include.
I'd like to see a third or fourth
An additional
chart.
exhibit. Yeah.
That, and what do you want in the chart?
I'd like to say, as of January 1st in a particular year,
Hmm.
this is the 10% we're shooting for, and this is where we are.
Okay.
So what you have in Exhibit 3, put in graph.
In a graph form.
Yeah.
Okay. That's easy to do. Yeah.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Anyone else on the committee have any comments about that? Let's move on. Actually, Howard was going, had he been here, to make a presentation on the page that he has in here. He's not here. It also relates to the next agenda item. So why don't we move to the next agenda item and hope that Howard arrives. I'm sorry, Rick, you did have your hand raised. Rick Atherton.
Yeah, I'm Rick Atherton. Just one question on the memo. I didn't see a reference, maybe I missed it, to the $5 million that's available to the Affordable Housing Trust. And it would seem to me that it's worth at least an explanation if you don't anticipate any shy eligible units coming on stream from the investment of that amount of money, and I'm a little puzzled by that. You've got all kinds of other projects, private projects, other ones, and whatever the difficulty is with this one, I don't know, but that's my question for you.
I just think I think that's really a question for the Affordable Housing Trust. not-
Well, I mean, I think this reflects the things that we know are in the pipeline, that exist, that are proposed or permitted, whereas anything happening with the CPC money to which Mr. Atherton refers has no definitive plan yet. There's no timeline or plan on the books for anything with that money, so there's nothing concrete to put on the list in terms of units. We have acquired a piece of property, but there's no development plan for it, so we couldn't identify any number of units to put on this chart as yet. So does that answer your question?
I think it only answers it in a sense. I mean, we're talking about a time frame here going out several years, and there are a lot of projects, or I shouldn't say a lot, there are projects on this list that don't have specific timeframes. They're in court. They're here, they're there. And you're estimating in those projects certain events to happen, and they may count for the shy list. Just take Tacoma Green as an example. I mean, so I'm not sure I fully follow that. I would have assumed by now that the Affordable Housing Trust would have said it would be nice to have some eligible units out of the use of those funds. And hopefully we'd have them within some time frame to help us get to the 10% or to meet some portion of the annual commitment for safe harbor. And the fact that you haven't done that yet and it's not incorporated here, I think is a little, I would encourage you to move along on that because it's real money. It ought to have a real potential impact on what you're doing.
I mean,
Yeah, Joe.
I'm sorry. It strikes me, but the best you can say though is put about a paragraph saying, and the Affordable Housing Trust Fund has an additional $5 million of allocated funds that it anticipates to be used for affordable purposes. I think your point is there's no plan for it, and your point is you've got extra resources isn't going to have an impact. So I'm not sure how concrete you want to be in something like this.
But I think at least mention, Joe, I think something like that is helpful because we can go back and find it.
As a member of the Affordable Housing
Yes.
Trust Fund, I would just like to say that we are in process with a number of things that are not yet public, a number of initiatives to create housing that will be on the shine list. Is that accurate to say? And I would like to see this on the agenda for the next Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
I actually think Rick has an interesting suggestion. We obviously cannot put any quantification, no
Right.
numbers in the tables, but I think a general footnote, what we're trying to do with this document is inform the public of all the resources that might potentially help. And a general footnote,
Well, it's important to say it's not under the purview of this group.
it's not.
Right.
That's what my
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, that is correct. And in Exhibit 3, when you look at the punchline at the end, we're still 55 units short of the 490 units required. And again, that number could change come 2021, 2022. But I don't disagree that noting that those funds are also available and will be deployed toward meeting that 55 unit gap would make good sense.
That would be my preference. Anyone opposed to that?
No, I think it has to be in here personally because this is a statement of the housing situation and the shy list management and an overall all-encompassing, overarching theme. And while we're advising the Affordable Housing Trust on the $20 million, this particular report isn't only on that 20 million, it's on the overall goal. So I think even a paragraph explaining it would be helpful in informing the public.
I have no issue with that. It can't be quantified in terms of unit numbers, but, dollar amount, yes, but yeah.
I just wanted to make another comment. Tucker, correct me if I'm wrong, but I see this as being kind of a living, breathing document.
Oh, yeah.
As we get information, we'll update that. I want to
Excuse me.
Quantifiable information.
Absolutely, and I think we have some, some caveats in there that this is the best, really estimation that we can make at this particular moment in time, and next week it might change slightly. So it is a living, breathing document. So if it makes sense to the committee, what I'm taking is maybe make some of the wording changes that I mentioned earlier, where they're consistent with the theme of what we're trying to do, add in the aspect of the $5 million and add in that cumulative chart coming out of the graph, really coming out of Exhibit 3, that with those changes, that's what the group would like to have ready for the trust and Neighborhood First joint meeting on the 19th. Is that?
That's perfect.
Yep.
Yep.
You wanna vote on that?
I don't know if it requires a vote. Someone want to make a motion?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, Eleanor thinks we need a vote. Yeah.
Because you're modifying the living, breathing document.
Well, we're talking about how to modify it. Okay,
You don't have to, but I think it's.
all right, let's be formal.
I'll put
Kristen?
through a motion to make the adjustments that Tucker just reviewed today.
Second.
A discussion?
Yes, you should.
Roll call, please, starting with Penny.
Penny Dye, aye.
Joe Brass, aye.
Christie Farrenborough, aye.
Peter Hoey, aye.
Brian Turbot, aye.
Brooke Moore, aye.
Brian?
Doug Abbey, aye.
And Doug, thank you. Posey? No vote.
Opposed?
I didn't get a response. Posey, you there? She must have stepped away from the phone.
No, sorry about that. I had my phone on mute again. Sorry. Yes, aye.
Okay, great. Unanimous. The next agenda item is a discussion of the evaluation of strategies document. And that is going to be up on the screen shortly. We may have passed out some copies. And is this up to date for Doug and Posey? This is,
Yes,
they have copies.
That's a large
Exactly.
version of what's in the packet.
Okay, great. So we have made some modifications to this document based upon the discussion at our meeting last. And again, I'd like Tucker Holland to lead us through this.
Thank
I'll
you.
make a comment before you begin. At our last meeting, we kind of went around the room and each commented as to what we thought was most efficient of the three strategies that are on there. And I think one of our members came up with a weighting of 80%, 20%. We felt that that was a little too precise. And so what you'll see in this version are ranges close to those numbers, because we thought that was a better way to handle this than Penny.
All right, Peter, I'd just like to comment too that I believe a majority of us felt that it was not going to be one specific approach, but more likely to be a hybrid approach.
Yep.
And I think that's in the minutes to that effect,
Ye-
yes.
Yeah, and it wasn't even a majority. You all agreed. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy to. I know we got a late start here, so I'm kind of conscious of keeping things moving along, and that some people have to go. But you can see, I think, fairly straightforwardly the changes since the last discussion. Again, meant to incorporate what came out of the September discussions. I would say that as Penny just noted, the group was uniformly committed to a multi-site approach and a multi-pronged strategy, but that it really ultimately will be a case-by-case basis. That and anyone please correct me they understood things differently. But there could be something that is, very appropriate in terms of density or scale in one location that might be wholly inappropriate in a different location. And so it really is a case by case situation, ultimately. At the last meeting, there were some finer point put onto some of the criteria that I think the group feels will ultimately be important in evaluating different opportunities, in addition to the ones that were originally part of the matrix: energy efficiency, proximity to other developments, proximity to sewer and water infrastructure, proximity to transportation, et cetera. We put a finer point on appropriateness of scale and density in any particular location. Massing, design, and site layout are important considerations. Susceptibility to delay was an item. Traffic, parking considerations, and again, how many other affordable developments are, within proximity of a particular site. So I think the revisions are fairly straightforward, and happy to answer anything further that I can.
The other reason that we shouldn't be too precise on this, I think, in addition to the vagaries that you mentioned before, is the vagaries of timing and other events and opportunities that come across the Affordable Housing Trust's desk, so to speak. Perhaps LIHTC tax subsidies will or will not be available on something.
Yep.
And Howard's document kind of goes to that a little bit. I would hope to keep him here before we leave this particular agenda item, to give him a chance to present that. And if not, I'll ask you to. But I think in evaluating this document, that's the way people should look at it. It's an organic document that's not meant to precisely say this is what you do at this time, because we have no idea what opportunities may come before us,
right, and
how they'll be eligible for tax subsidies or anything else.
And I'll just mention, I may have touched on it at the last meeting, but I have a meeting at the Department of Housing and Community Development, DHCD, next week, where the intention is to really get a firmer understanding on, now that we've identified different strategies, different considerations with respect to our safe harbor objective and employing any or all of these different strategies, so that we have a very clear roadmap, if you will, on how we remain in safe harbor, which is really a principal goal of this program.
Mr. Chairman.
Brooke.
I'd like to add one other, or ask my fellow members to consider one other thought, which is that we think about stating something about working within existing zoning, so that we're sending a message that we're not looking to expand the potential density of any particular area, our goal in looking at the different strategies is to work within what would be already appropriate to build within the zoning of whatever site we're looking at, just as a commitment on our part to the spirit of the article.
I would like to support that, because it does go to the core of one of the tenets of the article, which is to forestall and control our future in terms of 40Bs.
Any other members of the committee have any comment on Brooke's suggestion? Rick, did I see your hand up? Please, come to the microphone.
Yeah, again, I commented on some of these questions last time, and I appreciate what Brooke just said. I think what I've heard you say to help me get a better understanding of where you intend to go is the use of terms like appropriate. And that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And especially with your strategy 3, I think it would be helpful to the community to know more about what appropriate might mean. And I think zoning is an important one because you could go in and have, friendly 40Bs and all kinds of things. So I think developing some more language around that would be helpful. It doesn't have to happen right now, but I think it does have to happen to get a broad community support from town meeting. We all have our impressions of what people voted on. But without that, I think you've got a problem. I wasn't curious about one specific item on strategy 3. It's hard to read. Is it footnote? Number 4, would not spread housing out across the entire island. So I take that as meaning that housing developed under that strategy are not dispersing housing across the whole community. And if you ended up with 50% of your strategy, 50% of your housing in that strategy, it seems to me it wouldn't be dispersing the impact on various neighborhoods around the town. So I think some more explanation about that might be helpful.
I don't know where this footnote came from. I mean, I've seen it all along, but in light of Rick's comment, I'm curious as to how you might react.
I think that that there, again, what the group has talked about doing is really a combination of the different strategies. And so with respect to, and the combination of the different strategies might result in things being spread, let's say, around the island. This particular strategy, it may end up being, does it make sense to be, I'm going to use something that you've talked about before, like the fire station property that exists here in a particular known location and might efficiently be able to meet a year of safe harbor or that sort of thing. Does it, given that opportunity at hand, would it make sense to use, and I have to make up a number, $5 million of neighborhood first funds to go buy a parcel in Sconset that could do the same job? So it may not be that it's spread in the same manner under that particular strategy, but there well might be an individual situation in Sconset, I'll use as the example, that has several units within the complex. It could be acquired at a, call it reasonable price, and lend itself to being part of a rental program. I mean, so that's what I can say.
Joe?
Can I just comment, Mr. Chairman? I would suggest actually striking it from that footnote, because I don't think you could say that any of the other strategies are necessarily going to spread their solutions around the island either. I mean, we're not going to be buying $900,000 rental properties on the Pulpus Road. I mean, it's not going to happen. So I think I would suggest just striking it, because you don't really know where any of these solutions are going to end up planting themselves.
I agree that we should also strike this. I was actually a little surprised to see it, but I wanted to sort of share my own experience when we were devising this criteria. Was there isn't judgment, in my view, in these criteria and these footnotes. It's not supposed to be a judgment or an opinion. It's supposed to be an objective statement of anticipated impact. So I can see how this could be interpreted as an opinion or a position, and I think that should be taken.
As I read it, I thought it might have gotten in there because it was a reaction to some of the concerns we had about other strategies where they're not near employment, not near transportation, et cetera. And it's probably not a very eloquent way for us to have expressed that.
Well, I think I think you can see in the chart, there still are like kind of open spaces for pros and cons. And so I think it was going back a couple meetings where the committee was talking about, trying, as Penny suggests there, to be objective in looking at pros and cons of the different strategies that, how someone might view it as a pro or a con. But I am completely comfortable with removing it.
So two of our members have said they would favor, in strategy 3's footnotes, eliminating footnote number 4. Do any other members opposed to removing that?
So I would say that I would, perhaps, I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other right now, but perhaps the intent of it was to indicate if you're going to put a larger number of units on one place, that by nature means that you have fewer places to put things. So it is more likely, if you focus on strategy 3, that it would be less dispersed than if you focused entirely on strategy 1. So I think that's kind of what we were trying to get at, that the likelihood of broad disbursement goes down the more you allocate to strategy 3 than strategy 1. But on the other hand, if we increase the overall number of units that can be created by using strategy 3, we could still be pretty dispersed, but with more units concentrated in one place. So I think it's hard to come up with words that really describe the intent.
Doug, Abby, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yes, the main thing I can think of is that I think I think that having the guidelines be case dependent and having flexibility to pursue opportunities that are attractive, sensible, and meet what we're trying to do is to create places for families to live is how we should proceed. So other than that, I think the discussion has been helpful, but I think mainly keeping flexibility is important.
Thanks, Doug.
This is Cody. I had one other thought too. Since there was a suggestion that wording be added to say within the existing zoning, not having a full understanding of where there may be opportunities within existing zoning to do, more than 3 units on a site. Maybe that already exists. I'm not sure, but the objective being finding more places, more dispersed, more units falling into number 2, I guess, or even number 1. Is there a restriction on what can be done in the existing zoning as for the total number of units?
Yes.
So if you own a 2-acre piece of property and there's a house on it, and that's up for sale, and somebody buys that property, or the funds used by NHT and Neighborhood First is used to buy the property, I guess it's assumed that you could put up another house, although that would be significant more cost. But that would be within the existing zoning that we've been talking about, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Correct.
House or 2, depending on the zoning.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Based on ground coverage and septic.
I'm assuming
Right.
Brooke's suggestion would end up being footnote number 11 up under general footnotes. Is that what you want to?
Or under comments.
Okay, under comments. Joe, you raised the original objection.
Well, I actually wanted to go right back to Brooks' comment on, adhering to, current zoning rules. And just wanted to make the point that we might want to stay more flexible on that.
Okay.
Looking for appropriate, and, I don't think we're going to be building another unit 40B, but you don't know what's going to come down the pike, and you don't know what opportunities we have, and there may be situations where you're going to say, gee, maybe if there's a way to create 6 units on this particular piece of land as opposed to two that the current zoning allows, I know nothing about real estate development. We just may, I don't know if we want to just, all I'm saying is, I don't know if we want to tie our hands at this stage. Not that I don't agree, sort
Why
of
don't
principle.
why don't we take a stab at language that shows that we're gonna be respectful of zoning, but not tying our hands totally.
I think how Brooke originally phrased it may capture, she said, a goal of the program is to do it under that, which doesn't necessarily say it's, written in stone in the right situation.
If I may, through you, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Being a zoning administrator, I can talk in a little bit about this.
Great.
There are certainly situations where zoning would allow greater density. There are also situations where you would be eligible for special permit relief to get waivers from certain aspects of zoning. So you could be compliant with the zoning bylaw and get waivers. So in other words, you can have certain situations where if you needed to expand a dwelling, you could be expanding a setback intrusion or something. There are many, many cases where you would be able to take a situation and have a nonconformity, but it would be allowed either by right or through a special permit. So those are also options out there. That you don't want to be so strict that you're saying you will be 100% compliant with existing zoning, because you might have the availability of some relief to do what you want to do.
So perhaps what I'm talking is under the appropriateness of scale and density in a particular location with attention paid to current zoning or something along those lines. That's a motion.
So that is a motion.
So amending the appropriateness of scale and density in a particular location, comma, with attention paid to current zoning.
We have a second for that. Any further discussion? And where would that go, under general comments or under?
It's an amendment of the general comment that exists already.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, Penny.
Penny Dye, aye.
Joe Kraus, aye.
Christy Franklin, aye.
Peter Hoey, aye.
Brian Turbot, aye.
Brooke Moore, aye.
Posey?
Doug Abbey, aye.
And Posey?
Posey Constable, aye.
Okay, that passes unanimously.
Can I
just want to go back to the comment.
What your motion was? To amend general comments by adding,
To the comment that currently reads appropriateness of scale and density in a particular location, add comma, with attention paid to existing zoning.
Christie?
I just want, there was a comment about striking out under strategy 3, number 4.
Yeah.
And the same sentence is under number 1. Number 4 spreads housing across the island, and then says but not spread housing. So I think if we're gonna cross one out, we should cross the other. Or do we just need to rephrase that? Or are we just gonna leave it alone?
I'd like to leave that for, let Tucker take a crack at modifying that language in both locations and putting it out to everybody in the interest of time. Are there any other comments on the strategies document as you see it before you? Okay, again, consistent with the plan to meet together with the Affordable Housing Trust, we don't need to approve this in its finality, and in fact, we're making changes to it anyway. So you'll be receiving, when we distribute it, the revised version of this. Did you have a comment, Tucker?
Yeah, I mean, really, I heard two changes there, really, with respect to Brooks' amendment, which you all voted, and to take a look at item 4 under strategy 1 and 3.
Yes.
Logistical comment?
Yes.
Can you make this font bigger? It's hard to see even with.
Yes, we can try to get it in a better, yeah.
So this one typo, strategy 3 under 6, it should say other pros.
Not two fonts.
I'm sorry, what? Oh, cons. Well, I'm going to delete the other pros and cons at this stage. Yeah.
Two of our members have to leave in 5 or 10 minutes, so if we could move along the next item.
Peter, would you just mind a general comment first?
Oh, sure. member of the public.
Good afternoon to the board, Lauren Sinatra, Energy Coordinator. I want to commend your addition of energy into the conversation, as utility costs and affordable housing obviously go hand in hand. I would just like to remind the board of all of the hard work Tucker and I put into the housing production plan in 2016, and there are many energy, sustainable building, concepts, principles, strategies in that document that I hope they're codified and that they don't get lost in the shuffle and just those get appreciated for what they are. So I don't know if there's a way to make a footnote to that document. I think in reading the language, it was broad enough, it's still relevant today. And again, happy to assist the board however I can in that conversation going forward. So thank you.
So before you leave the microphone, so there is a column, opportunity for energy efficient design, and you're saying rather than just a general statement, you'd like to see something a little more. I'm thinking that the Affordable Housing Trust is where the implementation takes place. But do you feel it would carry more weight if it was part of our document as well?
I think there should be mention to the housing production plan, the energy efficiency of renewable energy and energy conservation guidelines and strategies. It goes way beyond what I think is outlined here. There's a lot of thought and effort put into it. So I just want that to be a reminder that that's an important, valuable reference.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so I just would add, at some point, the criteria that have been identified here would ultimately get translated into a evaluation tool that might be part of an RFI or RFP and for the trust and so forth. And so I think Lauren is offering to help put a finer point on things when we're at that juncture. And I just want to mention that Lauren and I had recently reconnected with the folks regarding Six Fairgrounds now that the light appears to be at the end of the tunnel on that. And I think they are working to have like an A-level energy efficiency.
Sure. A whole year later, after reconnecting, there are even more opportunities for tax incentives, state funding, and we're now pursuing passive house certification. So that goes above and beyond where we are as a stretch code community. It seems like there's a lot of resources and financial assistance that it makes sense to pursue, and I think that we can learn a lot from that example moving forward. So I just hope that that gets captured in this evolution of this document on best practices when it comes to sustainable building practices.
Thank you, Lauren. I'm going to suggest that we suspend Howard's one-page document for the discussion that we're going to have at our next meeting, since he is not here, and in the interest of time. The next agenda, everyone okay with that? So the next agenda item is communications. Again, put you on the hot seat here. Tucker, you had a comment or two?
So just briefly, really the step in the communication process here is going before the Affordable Housing Trust on November 19th and having the joint meeting, and presumably at that point really finalizing both of the documents that we discussed today to go out for broader distribution. I'll mention in the interim, the INM has reached out with respect to they want to do a story on Neighborhood First. They haven't done anything since the money was originally appropriated. Obviously, they have been following the work of this committee, and so they've reached out to several of us about what we're up to. So obviously all this information is really public information, and they may do a story in the next week or two about the different strategies that are being considered and the work of the committee. So you may hear from folks. It's heads up.
Thank you, Tucker. Any other comments on communications?
Sorry. Brooke, do you want to talk about the public forum?
I was going to talk about that. This idea of a public forum is something that's been floating around at the Affordable Housing Trust and in my brain. I've actually been assigned the task of the Affordable Housing Trust of trying to organize a housing forum of sorts in the winter, probably in January, mid-January. And I'm conceptualizing this as an opportunity to bring together this group to present our work, the Affordable Housing Trust, and other housing advocates in Nantucket to do a where we're at and where we're going kind of presentation to the community, hopefully live streamed so that people can attend via the web in a location where we can broadcast live. And so Tucker and I are trying to work up some definitive plans for that and more to come.
Thank you, Brooke.
We may have the opportunity to bring in like a nationally recognized speaker and have some underwriting that we may have access to do so. So we'll update you more at the next meeting.
Yeah.
I remember about 10 years ago, some folks came over from Martha's Vineyard, not to suggest we should follow Martha's Vineyard in any way, but is there any benefit?
Absolutely. Like Philippe Jordy at the Island Housing Trust is worked closely with us, and we would absolutely be inviting someone like that, like to this sort of forum.
Great.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the trust has had visitors from the Cape who are housing advocates as well, and so we're doing a lot of outreach, regional outreach on what other folks are doing, and that's been really collaborative and helpful.
I'd like to volunteer my time to the forum if it's helpful as an energy consultant to kind of help navigate the opportunities that Lauren's just recommended.
Could you?
And my name's Andy Bacino.
Thank you, Andy.
You're welcome.
You've been here before, but just for the record,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, done with communications? Any other comments on communications? Are there any comments from the public? Well, that's good, we're moving on. Other business, just I'll make one note that the next meeting is shown as Monday, November 18th. If you would please revise that to Tuesday.
You need to vote.
We need to vote on that change?
Yes.
Okay. The proposal is that we meet not Monday, the November 18th, but on Tuesday, the 19th, at what time?
1 o'clock. I'll make a motion.
Okay.
All right?
It's at 1 o'clock, it's here.
It'll be a joint meeting with
It'll be a joint meeting from 1 o'clock with a hard stop at 3 o'clock.
I'll make a motion.
I'm sorry. And why is there a hard stop at 2 o'clock?
At 3 o'clock, because CPC.
Oh, at 3 o'clock?
Yep,
That's
3
right,
o'clock,
all
because CPC meets at 3 o'clock.
That's fine.
in
I
this
just
room.
didn't want to limit to 1 hour that
So
discussion.
November 19th, to be specific, that's what your motion, so motion to change the meeting to November 19th at 1 PM in TSF in this room.
So, Penny, you were
Yeah, I
making,
made that motion.
okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Penny, begin. Sorry.
Penny Dye,
Aye.
Christy Farrington, aye.
Peter Hoey, aye.
Brian Turbot, aye.
Brooke Moore, aye.
Posey?
Posey, aye.
Doug?
Doug Abbey, aye.
Thank you, we're unanimous on that. Any other comments on other business?
Excuse me.
Okay, and with respect to the fact that
Peter?
we're losing two,
I'm forgetting, did we talk about data platform presentation at that meeting already? At this meeting, we've had
we
two
did not
meetings.
talk about it at this meeting.
you mentioned that it would be,
Okay, but was that during this meeting? Okay, sorry.
I think it was.
I think it was, no.
Okay, I would just like to repeat
Go
that
ahead.
the
Yeah.
Nantucket Data Platform will be doing a presentation at our joint meeting on the 19th of their, the output from the study that we contracted with them.
So I have concerns that we don't have enough time for a presentation by them, which I think could chew up lots of minutes.
Our intention is an hour for each, for the 2 hours.
Should we start at 12?
We could.
To make sure the room's available.
It looked like it was the other day, I'd have to confirm with Maria.
I'd really like to not squeeze those two into 2 hours.
Yeah.
It is available prior to 1.
Tucker?
So we could, we can look if the trust ends up being available to start earlier. But I think that as far as the data platform goes, Brooke mentioned they just furnished the report, which the trust members will all have received, like shortly and have had well in advance of that day. And we have said to the data platform, the idea would be to come and do a 10 to 15 minute at the outside presentation and then allow for some questions. So I don't think like that is going to eat up a tremendous amount of time, but
I believe we're gonna need an hour and a half.
okay.
Is the data platform, the report, the work, it's a work in progress, this is not their final report.
This is their final report.
This is their final report.
Yeah.
Are we expected to act on it at that meeting?
Act, not necessarily, but definitely to ask questions about what's there.
That's not fair.
No, it's not. No, the presentation, we're saying to them, they're going to present the report in a slideshow manner. But that the presentation itself would be 10 or 15 minutes, and then obviously time for questions.
The one thing that's inflexible is we have to be out of this room at 3 o'clock, correct?
Correct.
Therefore, I'd like the group to consider revising the motion to give us the flexibility to start the meeting earlier, subject to the Affordable Housing Trust being able to. I'd like to say 12 at least.
I
Not
can't.
At least. I mean, can you be here at 12:30? Or any other members not able to be here at 12? You
I
can
can't.
join us at 1.
I can't be here, period.
Okay.
I'm out of town.
I can't start at noon and I have to leave by 2 because we have budget prep for the select board presentation in December, so I have an hour.
So,
Eric's not here.
My question is, Mr. Chairman, are we going to be taking action on anything at that meeting? Because we can post it, and if we don't have a quorum, not actually open a meeting, and just the members could be present for
that's true. All along, I've-
so you'd be doing a presentation to the Affordable Housing Trust
if possible, we can,
and conduct no business. So that a quorum of this group is not, as we discussed, absolutely necessary.
yeah.
So, but I know everyone would want to be here,
Brian
so.
has to leave at 2. Could you come at
I can
12:30?
try to move some things around to get here for 12:30.
I do think we need to know ahead of time how many of us are going to.
Yeah, we'll poll.
Okay, I'm gonna withdraw my previous motion.
Yeah.
Is that how I do it? Yes.
You amend.
Okay, I'm ending my.
Amend.
Amend, okay, let's amend. Amend.
Will we all get a copy of the report I mean, I guess the Affordable Housing Trust is getting it, but will we all get it as well?
Yes, you will get it.
Of our report.
No.
No, of the data platform report. Yeah.
So I'd like to amend the previous motion, which we just voted to start the meeting at noon.
At 12:30.
At 12:30 on Tuesday, November the 19th, here at Fort Fairhouse.
Second.
Second.
Want to second that?
Second.
Discussion?
Second. Rosie, second.
Okay. Any discussion? All right, we'll go around the room here first, and then I'll call for votes from the 2 members on the phone.
Penny Dye, aye.
Joe Gross, aye.
Christie Frantella, aye.
Peter Hoey, aye.
Brian Turbot, aye.
Brooke Moore, aye.
Opposing?
Aye.
Doug?
Doug Abbey, aye.
Thank you very much. Okay, we do not plan to go into executive session because we will not have a quorum.
No quorum at this point in time, if Brian needs to leave before it's over, there's no point.
There's nothing super pressing for.
Very short,
Yeah, that's fine. How short?
5 minutes.
Okay, I can give you 5 more.
Well, it's gonna take 5 minutes to get these cameras from that too.
That's
Oh, that's,
Yeah,
that's right. That's not gonna work.
Sorry.
It takes
It
forever.
is what
for
it
them to
is.
shut off.
Is there anything urgent?
no. There's really nothing pressing. Yeah.
Great. So we I think need a motion.
I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Without going in. Second,
Second.
discussion. All in favor? Penny, I'm sorry, keep doing
Oh,
this.
Penny Dye, aye, sorry.
Joe Gross, aye.
Christie Frantella, aye.
Peter Hoey, aye.
Brian Turbot, aye.
Brooke Moore, aye.
Posey,
Doug Abbey, aye.
Rosie, Constable, aye.
thank you both very much, and thank you all for coming, and thanks everyone for coming back on short notice for this meeting.